It's 4:17 a.m. on January 21st, 2026. A Russian infantry battalion in northern Sumy Oblast has no idea they have exactly 8 minutes left before their fortified positions cease to exist. High above the pre-dawn darkness, two Ukrainian Su-27 fighters are racing toward the border at 850 kilometers per hour, each carrying a payload that will change everything. The pilots aren't using their radars. They're flying dark, relying on ground-based targeting data uploaded just 90 seconds ago. Russian forces in the Sumy region have been fortifying their positions for months, building an intricate network of trenches, bunkers, and reinforced firing positions. These aren't improvised dugouts. These are engineered defensive structures with overhead protection rated to withstand 152mm artillery shells. The main trench line extends for 2.3 kilometers, with interconnecting communication trenches every 80 meters. 3 reinforced bunkers serve as command posts, ammunition storage, and casualty collection points. Russian military doctrine considers these positions nearly impregnable to conventional artillery. But the Ukrainians aren't bringing conventional artillery. They're bringing something the Russian commanders didn't account for: modified French Hammer precision-guided munitions integrated onto Soviet-era fighters through a crash engineering program that took Ukrainian and French technicians just 4 months to complete. Each bomb weighs 250 kilograms, but the warhead itself is only 110 kilograms of high explosive. The rest is guidance systems, control surfaces, and the pop-out wings that will allow these weapons to glide up to 70 kilometers from their release point. At 4:19 a.m., Ukrainian ground intelligence confirms the target. Thermal imaging from a reconnaissance drone operating at 3,800 meters altitude shows 47 distinct heat signatures inside the trench network. Russian soldiers rotating off night watch, gathering near warming fires, preparing for the morning shift change. This is the most vulnerable moment in any 24-hour defensive cycle. Maximum personnel concentration, minimum alertness. The Ukrainian targeting officer uploads the final coordinates. 3 aiming points have been selected with surgical precision. Strike Point Alpha targets the central command bunker. Strike Point Bravo focuses on the ammunition storage section in the western trench line. Strike Point Charlie aims for the intersection of 3 communication trenches where thermal imaging shows the highest concentration of personnel. The geometry has been calculated to create a cascade effect. If the timing is perfect, the first explosion will drive soldiers toward what they think are safe positions, directly into the impact zones of the following strikes. The lead Su-27 pilot receives weapons release authorization at 4:21 a.m. His aircraft is now 68 kilometers from the target, flying at 4,200 meters altitude. This is beyond the engagement envelope of Russian Pantsir S-1 systems positioned near the border. Those systems can track targets at this range, but their missiles become ineffective beyond 20 kilometers. The pilot doesn't even need to cross into contested airspace. He simply needs to put his aircraft on the correct heading, achieve the exact airspeed, and release at the precise moment. The weapons officer in the rear seat monitors the targeting pod display. The infrared image shows the Russian positions as bright white shapes against the cold ground. He can see individual soldiers moving between positions. One figure appears to be carrying ammunition crates. Another is smoking near a trench entrance, the cigarette's heat signature visible even from this altitude. These details matter because the Hammer guidance system uses contrast recognition. The clearer the thermal image at release, the higher the probability of a direct hit. At 4:22 and 14 seconds, the first hammer separates from its pylon. The release is so smooth that the pilot barely feels it. A 250-kilogram bomb leaving an aircraft creates aerodynamic changes, but the Su-27's flight control computer compensates automatically. The weapon falls free for exactly 1.8 seconds, a deliberate delay programmed to ensure safe separation from the aircraft. Then, the guidance fins deploy with a sharp mechanical snap, and the pop-out wings extend to their full 3-meter span. The hammer immediately pitches into a controlled glide. It's not falling anymore, it's flying. The inertial navigation system, combined with GPS guidance and a terrain-following algorithm, calculates the optimal glide path. The bomb can't maneuver aggressively. Its control surfaces are designed for fine adjustments, not evasive action. But it doesn't need to dodge anything. It just needs to follow the programmed flight path with millimeter precision. The second 𝙄𝙤𝙨 releases 3 more hammers in rapid sequence, each separated by 2.7 seconds, to prevent interference between their guidance systems. 4 bombs are now gliding silently through the darkness, descending toward targets 64 kilometers away. Russian radar operators at the forward air defense position see nothing unusual. Their systems are optimized to detect fast-moving aircraft and cruise missiles, not slowly descending glide bombs with minimal radar cross-sections. The hammer's airframe is relatively small, and it's approaching at a shallow angle, further reducing radar return. On Russian displays, these weapons might appear as nothing more than weather clutter or migrating birds. The Ukrainian pilots execute an immediate 180-degree turn after weapons release. Their mission is complete. Within 40 seconds, both fighters are accelerating away from the border, descending to low altitude where terrain masking will make them invisible to Russian surveillance radar. They've spent less than 90 seconds in the release zone. By the time Russian air defense networks even process what happened, the Su-27s will be 110 kilometers away, safely beyond any response capability. Meanwhile, the hammer bombs continue their precision approach. Each weapon's guidance computer is processing data from 3 independent sources. GPS satellites provide positioning accurate to 3 meters. Inertial measurement units track every subtle change in velocity and orientation, and infrared seekers locked onto the thermal signatures of the target structures. If GPS jamming activates, and Russian electronic warfare systems are certainly trying, the bombs will switch to inertial navigation with terminal infrared guidance. They can't be stopped by jamming alone. At 4:24 a.m., a Russian forward observer thinks he hears something unusual. A faint whistling sound, like wind through power lines, but wrong somehow. He looks up into the pre-dawn darkness and sees nothing. The sound is the hammer bombs passing overhead at 280 kilometers per hour. By the time his brain processes the auditory input, the first bomb is already in its terminal dive, descending at 67 degrees, accelerating to 320 kilometers per hour under gravity's pull. The first hammer strikes the command bunker's reinforced concrete roof at 4:24 and 37 seconds. The impact isn't immediate catastrophic. There's a fraction of a second where physics argues with engineering. The 250-kilogram weapon punches through 40 centimeters of reinforced concrete, the penetrator nose designed specifically for this purpose. The weapon continues downward through the roof structure, through 80 centimeters of empty space and into the bunker interior before the delayed action fuse triggers detonation. 110 kilograms of composition explosive detonates inside an enclosed concrete structure. The blast wave has nowhere to go except through the weakest points. In this case, that's the human bodies occupying the space and the ventilation shafts connecting to adjacent bunker sections. The overpressure pulse reaches 75 kilopascals in 0.003 seconds. Human eardrums rupture at 35 kilopascals. Lung tissue tears at 55 kilopascals. At 75 kilopascals, the human body experiences what's called blast lung, massive internal hemorrhaging, and immediate incapacitation. 17 Russian soldiers in that bunker experience catastrophic trauma before their nervous systems can even register pain. The blast wave propagates through the connecting trenches at 340 meters per second, the speed of sound in air at ground level. Soldiers 50 meters away feel the ground shake violently. Those facing toward the explosion experience temporary blindness from the flash that precedes the blast by microseconds. Combat veterans recognize the distinctive double thump of a bunker-penetrating explosion and immediately know what happened. The second hammer impacts 2.1 seconds later, striking the ammunition storage section. This explosion is different. The initial detonation of the bomb's 110-kilogram warhead serves as an ignition source for the ammunition stored inside. Russian forces had been stockpiling 152-millimeter artillery shells, 82-millimeter mortar rounds, and wooden crates containing thousands of rifle ammunition. The hammer's explosion triggers a chain reaction. Artillery shells cook off in sequence, each detonation triggering adjacent munitions. Within 4 seconds, the entire Western ammunition storage section transforms into what witnesses later describe as a volcano. A column of fire and debris shoots 80 meters into the air. Secondary explosions continue for 40 seconds as munitions detonate in random sequence. The thermal signature is so intense that Ukrainian surveillance drones 12 kilometers away automatically adjust their camera exposure to prevent sensor overload. The temperature at the epicenter exceeds 1,400 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt steel. Russian soldiers in adjacent trench sections react with trained discipline. Squad leaders immediately order evacuation toward pre-designated assembly areas. These are fortified positions 200 meters east of the main trench line, specifically designed as rally points during bombardment. The soldiers sprint through communication trenches, carrying wounded comrades, moving with the controlled urgency of men who have trained for this exact scenario. They don't know they're running directly into the third aiming point. The third and fourth hammer bombs arrive simultaneously at 4:24 and 51 seconds. Ukrainian targeting officers had calculated this moment perfectly. The delayed impact of the first two weapons would trigger predictable evacuation patterns. Russian tactical doctrine is standardized. When a position comes under heavy fire, personnel evacuate to predetermined assembly areas. The Ukrainians knew exactly where those areas would be because they'd been studying Russian defensive procedures for months. Both bombs strike within 15 meters of each other, creating an overlapping blast zone that covers approximately 2,400 square meters. Soldiers who survived the first two explosions, who thought they were reaching safety, are caught in the open. The blast waves from both weapons merge into a single destructive force, throwing debris, equipment, and human bodies in chaotic trajectories. Trees at the edge of the impact zone are snapped at their trunks. A supply truck parked 90 meters away is flipped onto its side by the overpressure wave. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones capture the entire sequence in infrared. The video footage shows the Russian position transforming from an organized defensive network into a burning wasteland in less than 20 seconds. Thermal signatures that represented human soldiers moments ago are now scattered across the landscape. The ammunition storage section continues to burn, sending a smoke column visible for 40 kilometers. Russian communication channels erupt with distress calls, casualty reports, and desperate requests for medical evacuation. At the Russian battalion command post 8 kilometers to the rear, the duty officer receives fragmented reports. Command bunker destroyed. Ammunition section gone. Massive casualties. Western trench line collapsed. He immediately requests air defense analysis. How did Ukrainian aircraft penetrate their coverage? The air defense coordinator responds with confusion. Their radars detected no enemy aircraft in the strike zone. The Su-27s had released weapons from outside the engagement envelope, a tactic the Russian forces hadn't anticipated. Within minutes, Russian artillery begins counter-battery fire, targeting suspected Ukrainian positions. But the Su-27s are already back at their base, 140 kilometers inside Ukrainian-controlled territory. The pilots are conducting post-flight debriefings, describing the weapons release sequence in technical detail. Ukrainian intelligence officers are already analyzing battle damage assessment imagery, counting destroyed positions, estimating casualties, calculating the operational impact. The hammer strike accomplished several strategic objectives simultaneously. First, it eliminated a reinforced Russian infantry position that had been anchoring the northwestern defensive line in Sumy Oblast. Second, it destroyed a forward ammunition stockpile that had been supplying Russian artillery operations across a 15-kilometer front. Third, It demonstrated that Ukrainian Air Force can strike fortified positions with precision weapons, bypassing traditional air defense networks through standoff range engagement. But perhaps most importantly, it sent a psychological message. Russian forces in Sumy Oblast now understand that their fortified positions offer no guaranteed safety. If bunkers rated to withstand 152mm shells can be destroyed by precision strikes from aircraft they never even detected, then nowhere is truly secure. This psychological impact ripples through defensive units, affecting morale, decision-making, and operational confidence. The tactical innovation here deserves examination. The Hammer kit transforms ordinary bombs into precision-guided munitions using a relatively simple add-on system. A nose-mounted guidance module, pop-out glide wings, and control surfaces that connect to GPS and inertial navigation systems. This allows older Soviet-era aircraft like the Su-27 to deliver precision strikes without expensive platform modifications. Ukrainian and French engineers completed the integration in record time, solving compatibility challenges between Western guidance systems and Soviet weapon interfaces. The munitions themselves use a combination of GPS, inertial navigation, and infrared terminal guidance. This triple redundancy approach makes them extremely difficult to counter. Jamming GPS won't stop them because inertial navigation can guide them to within 10 meters of target. Jamming radio frequencies won't matter because the guidance is autonomous after release. The only effective countermeasure would be intercepting the weapons during their glide phase, but that requires detecting them first, which Russian radar systems have consistently failed to do. Russian military analysts are now studying this engagement intensively. They're reviewing radar logs, analyzing air defense deployment patterns, and trying to understand how Ukrainian aircraft delivered effective strikes from standoff range. The answer is uncomfortable. Modern precision weapons have created an engagement envelope problem that legacy air defense systems weren't designed to address. Systems like Pantsir S-1 are optimized for threats approaching at high speed from predictable vectors. Slow-gliding bombs approaching at shallow angles from extreme range exploit fundamental gaps in radar coverage and engagement geometry. Ukrainian forces are now applying lessons from this strike across other front sectors. If precision glide bombs can destroy fortified positions in Sumy, they can do the same in Donetsk, Luhansk, and Zaporizhzhia. The operational implications are significant. Russian forces can no longer rely on static defensive positions to provide protection. Every fortified bunker, every ammunition depot, every command post becomes a potential target for precision strikes that arrive without warning from aircraft operating beyond air defense coverage. The Hammer munitions used in this strike cost approximately 200,000 euros each. 4 weapons totaling 800,000 euros destroyed infrastructure, ammunition stockpiles, and inflicted casualties that would cost Russia tens of millions to replace. The cost-exchange ratio is dramatically in Ukraine's favor. More importantly, the operational disruption extends beyond immediate physical damage. Russian forces in the sector must now redistribute their defensive deployment, divert air defense assets to cover previously secure areas, and implement new operational procedures to mitigate precision strike vulnerability. Within 12 hours of the strike, Russian military logistics in northern Sumy Oblast undergo visible changes. Ammunition depots are relocated away from forward positions. Command bunkers are abandoned in favor of mobile headquarters that change location every 6 hours. Infantry units reduce concentration levels to minimize casualties from potential future strikes. These changes impose logistical costs, reduce operational efficiency, and strain command and control systems that were already operating near capacity. Ukrainian intelligence monitors these changes in real time through satellite imagery, intercepted communications, and reconnaissance drone footage. Every Russian adjustment creates new opportunities for exploitation. If ammunition depots move further from the front line, Russian artillery experiences supply delays. If command posts become mobile, coordination between units degrades. If infantry units disperse to reduce concentration, they lose defensive cohesion. The hammer strike initiated a cascade of operational effects that extend far beyond the immediate battle damage. The success of this operation validates Ukraine's strategic approach to air power. Without the resources to achieve air superiority through massive fighter procurement, Ukrainian Air Force has focused on maximizing the effectiveness of existing platforms through precision weapons integration. This allows small numbers of aircraft to generate disproportionate operational impact. 2 Su-27s delivering 4 precision munitions accomplished what would traditionally require dozens of artillery tubes firing hundreds of shells over multiple hours. Russian forces are now requesting additional air defense systems to cover the Sumy sector, but those systems must be diverted from other areas, creating gaps in defensive coverage along the broader front line. This is exactly the strategic dilemma that precision strike capability creates. Defending against standoff precision weapons requires distributed air defense networks with overlapping coverage. But Russia doesn't have unlimited air defense assets, and every system deployed to counter Ukrainian precision strikes is one less system available to protect critical infrastructure, logistics hubs, or operational reserves. As dawn breaks over Sumy Oblast on January 21st, Russian engineering units begin the grim task of clearing the destroyed positions. Bodies must be recovered. Unexploded munitions must be identified and removed. The ammunition storage fire continues to burn, sending toxic smoke across the landscape. Casualty reports are still incomplete, but initial estimates suggest more than 30 killed and at least 50 wounded, many critically. For a single infantry battalion, these losses are devastating, effectively removing the unit from combat effectiveness for weeks. Ukrainian forces are already planning follow-up operations. The precision strike created a gap in Russian defensive lines that can be exploited through ground maneuvers. Artillery units are repositioning to engage targets that were previously protected by the now destroyed Russian positions. Drone operators are mapping remaining Russian strongpoints for potential future strikes. The operational tempo is accelerating, not because Ukrainian forces have overwhelming resources, but because they're maximizing the impact of limited capabilities through precise timing and tactical innovation. This engagement represents a broader evolution in modern warfare. Precision-guided munitions, integrated with legacy platforms through rapid engineering solutions, are changing the calculus of defensive operations. Fortifications that would have been nearly invulnerable to conventional artillery 20 years ago can now be destroyed by single precision strikes from aircraft operating beyond visual range. This shifts the advantage toward forces that can integrate technology rapidly and employ it with tactical creativity. The Russian military is learning painful lessons about the vulnerability of static defensive positions in an era of precision strike warfare. But organizational adaptation takes time, especially in large military bureaucracies with deeply entrenched operational doctrines. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces are refining their tactics with each engagement, building institutional knowledge about precision weapons employment, developing targeting procedures, and creating operational playbooks that maximize effectiveness. As smoke continues rising from the destroyed Russian positions in Sumy Oblast, the strategic implications of this single strike ripple across the broader conflict. Ukrainian Air Force has demonstrated an capability that Russian forces must now account for in every defensive plan. The psychological impact on Russian soldiers fortifying positions across eastern Ukraine is immediate and significant. If reinforced bunkers in Sumy can be destroyed by bombs they never saw coming, what protection can any fortification really offer? The war continues to evolve, driven by technological innovation, tactical adaptation, and the relentless reality that precision weapons have fundamentally changed the nature of ground combat. Ukraine's successful integration of Western precision munitions onto Soviet-era aircraft represents exactly the kind of asymmetric capability that allows smaller forces to compete effectively against numerically superior opponents. The hammer strikes in Sumy Oblast demonstrate what's possible when tactical innovation meets operational necessity. Russian forces in the sector are now adjusting their defensive posture, but every adjustment creates new vulnerabilities. The strategic initiative in this area has shifted, and Ukrainian forces are pressing that advantage with methodical precision. The destroyed trenches, the burning ammunition depot, the casualties being evacuated under covering artillery fire, all of these are immediate tactical results. But the operational and psychological effects will resonate much longer, influencing how Russian forces think about defensive operations and how Ukrainian forces approach precision strike missions across the entire front. This is modern warfare, not mass formations clashing in open battle, but precision strikes executed from beyond visual range, destroying carefully prepared positions in seconds, creating operational effects that cascade through enemy defensive networks. The Ukrainian pilots who released those hammer bombs never saw their targets directly. They relied on coordinates uploaded from ground controllers, released weapons from standoff range, and returned to base before the first explosion even occurred. Yet their impact on this sector of the front is unmistakable and will influence operations here for weeks to come.